Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of the Truth and All podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chris Chastain, and today we have a lot to get into. The AP poll just came out, and I'll talk about what exactly that is for people that don't really pay attention to college football and may not know what that is, and need to know what that is, or may not need to know, but I just think it's always a good thing to know. You always see the number on the side of your screens, and yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. But we're also today, because of the unanimous vote, or basically unanimous vote to be able to hear the Big Ten preview today. Is what we are doing today. The Big Ten preview. So a lot to get into. But first off, let's get into that AP poll. Basically, for anybody that doesn't know, I know probably 99% of people do know, but the AP poll is pretty much a poll that is released every Monday around noon, and it's updated every week. It talks about the top 25 teams every week after whatever happens. So say there's an upset and one team's going to drop. Y'all should know. Also, that's pretty much what it is. And used to, it had more meaning. It doesn't have as much meaning as it used to because of the college football playoff. After the college football playoff came into play, it kind of removed some of the meaning for the AP poll, or a lot of the meaning. But people still go by it. You can't really base anything off of it. So say your team's at 6. That doesn't mean when the college football playoff poll comes out that your team's going to be 6. Your team could be 8 or 9, depending on what that 12-man and woman committee thinks about that team. Your team could be 6 in the AP poll and 12 in the college football playoff poll. Normally, it's around within 5. I've come to terms and basically 99% of cases, your team's normally within 5 points of the AP poll. So, like if your team was 6, it would be no worse than 11. So that's pretty much just a quick description of what the AP poll is and what the college football playoff poll is, and just so everybody knows, just because I know there's some confusion around it for some people that don't pay attention to college football at all. But that's really what that is. But let's jump into the poll while we are talking about that. So at the one spot we have Alabama, as of course anybody would figure. They just won the national championship. Have no problem with that at all. At 2 they have Clemson with the 18 votes of the number 1 spot. I don't quite understand why you would even get 18 votes, but they did get 18 votes nonetheless. And they are the 2. At 3 is Georgia. Got no votes as the number 1. Understandable. They lost Nick Chubb. They lost their biggest stars from last season. They're bound to fall off some. They're sitting at 3. Understandable. 4, Wisconsin did get 1 vote for the number 1 spot, which is kind of confusing to me, but nonetheless, they did get that 1 vote, and they were 13-1 a season ago. And at 5 is Ohio State, 12-2 last season, and sitting at the 5. Lots of questions about them. We will get into that pretty seriously in just a few minutes, probably about 20 minutes from now, and a lot to get into with Ohio State and the Big Ten, and Wisconsin. So a lot of these teams we will discuss, or a couple of these teams we will discuss in just a minute, so do not panic. I'm fine with the top 5. Have no problem with it. Really, I don't have any votes for number 1 Clemson got. I think that's a little many, but they did get them nonetheless. Let's move on to 6 through 10. 6 is Washington Huskies. Pac-12, we talked about them the other day. They're bound to win the Pac-12. They're right there with Arizona and Utah, and they're probably going to win it. So I get that. They did go up 10 spots. They went up 10 spots from the last season, so that is a little surprising. At 7, you have Oklahoma, bound to drop off after losing Baker Mayfield to the NFL. Not surprised. They'll still be a good team, but they won't be. They won't be in the. They won't start off, I don't think, as a playoff team. Just based off of that, you lost your biggest aspect in Baker Mayfield. No doubt, biggest aspect at all. So yeah, I understand that. They may, in my poll, they would even drop off a little more, I think. At 8 is Miami, Florida. Finished in 3 last season at the 8. I have no problem with that. I thought Auburn would jump on, which, speaking of the Auburn Tigers, at number 9. A season ago, went to the SEC championship, kind of got a questionable run. Beat Alabama and made it to the SEC championship. But nonetheless, they're at 9. I thought they should have been a little higher, even with their record being 10-4. I thought they were still, like I said, I thought they would still make it. And that 10 is the Penn State Nittany Lions. At 11-2 last season, finish up at 10. That team, I think, is going to surprise some people, and I'll tell you why in a little bit when we get into our rankings of the Pac-12 and of the Big Ten. Lots of Big Ten teams here in the top 10, so it'll be great, or in the top 15, so it'll be great. We're going to talk about each one of them. I would think in a little bit of depth, their schedule and stuff. So let's go on and move on to number 11, where we have the Michigan State Spartans at number 11. We'll talk about that in a little bit more too. I don't want to talk about that right now. Lots of Big Ten teams. I don't want to talk about right this second. At 12, we have Notre Dame. They're an interesting team. I will say that. So I have no problem with that. First major disagreement coming up at 13. They had the Stanford Cardinal at 13. They will not finish. I don't think they'll finish in top 25. I really don't. I just think with their tough schedule, they don't. They finish probably with a similar record, 9-5. I don't even know if they get 9 wins. I think they get more like 8 wins. I think they're an 8-5 type team. They may finish 9 with the bowl game, and the other 9-4. But nonetheless, I don't like where they're ranked right now. I don't think they finish that high. At 14 is the Michigan Wolverines. I have no problem with that. I'm pretty high on, considering pretty high on Michigan. At least I think. At 15 they have USC. USC will fall. They probably should have fallen more with the loss of Sam Darnold. They won't. I don't think they'll finish in the top 25 at all. I really don't. I don't think they're a top 25 team. Let's move on to 16 through 20. At 16 they have TCU. We talked about them the other day. They're gonna compete and possibly win that Big 12 conference. May not make it to the college football playoff, but I think they'll be a top 10 team for sure. At 17 is West Virginia. We talked about them the other day too. They'll finish pretty well, I think. I'm trying to go through this kind of fast just because there's a lot to talk about today with the Big Ten. At 18, nonetheless, at 18 is Michigan State, Mississippi State, excuse me. At 18, 19 is my next biggest disagreement. Florida State, a year ago finished 7-6. I see them having a similar record. May go 8 wins, but I don't think they've finished no more than 8 wins. And they probably drop out of the top 25 at some point. At 20, let's go through 20 through 25. At 20 they have Virginia Tech, no problem. UCF, people complain about how low they're ranked, but they're ranked at 21. I had no problem with it. Scott Frost went to Indiana or wherever he went, and I just have no problem with that. Considering I think they'll probably fall off too. They won't finish undefeated, and they're just another American Conference team that went really, really good last season. Really impressive. And came damn close to making that college football playoff, considering compared to other teams, they were ranked 6th in the end. An American team's not going to make it anyway, but nonetheless, let's move on. Boise State out of the Mountain West at 22. Don't really care about these last 4, but nonetheless, 23 Texas, 24 Oregon, 25 LSU. Although I think LSU probably should have been replaced with another team, maybe South Carolina or Utah. I think one of those two teams. I don't like how high they got Florida. They have Florida at 27. I don't like that at all. I really don't think they're a top 20. I don't think they're a top 30 team. I really don't. But yeah, that wraps up the top 25 for the AP poll. Look forward to that. Just be sure, just look on wherever about noon to 1 o'clock. They normally have it out around then. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over that real quick just because it was just released. I'm recording this on Monday, so it was just released on Monday, noon. So it's kind of time to move on. We have a lot to get into in the Big Ten, but I would first off like to kind of talk about the Urban Meyer situation and just really an update about it. It looks like the latest news was there's a 19-man committee of Ohio State board gonna vote or review the investigation and vote on what they think should happen with Urban Meyer, whether that be a suspension, the firing, or just he comes back and it's all done. It looks like, just based off of what I've read, that he will be suspended. That he's likely to be suspended. Looks like 2 to 4 weeks, maybe longer, maybe 6 weeks. I don't know how much of this varies on what the record difference is going to be for the Ohio State Buckeyes, or what I really think about it, but I'm going to kind of base it off as if Urban Meyer's not that big of a factor, and this is important because of where I have Ohio State at in the end. So big things coming. I'm not Urban Meyer won't be a big part of this big part of this preview, because I am assuming he will be suspended. The expectation is that he will survive it and he will stay on board. He just likely will receive a suspension of 2 to 4 weeks, maybe even longer. Nobody really knows. Just what I've heard. But let's kind of move on. That will have a big bearing on my rankings. That won't have a big bearing on my rankings unless he's fired. Then we have a different story. I think that changes the story a little bit. But nonetheless, Big Ten preview starting right now. We're going to do it a little differently than we did the Big 12 preview. I did not really like how we did the Big 12 preview. I sat down and thought about it, and I just didn't like it. So we're going to do it a little differently. Pretty much how I did it, we did it with Eric on the other day on the Pac-12 preview show. We're going to go into our best quarterback, best running back, best defense, and then we will get into the rankings. So very exciting things coming, I think. So chill back, sit back, relax, and enjoy. And we will start off with our best quarterback. To me, man, This is more based off of experience. I think the best quarterback in this conference will end up being Trace McSorley, quarterback out of Penn State. Just based off of experience and just off really more off experience than anything. I think he's played very well the past few seasons, and I expect him to finish as the best quarterback. We'll have some freshmen that come close or stuff like that, but I expect that's, in my opinion, the best quarterback in this conference. The best running back, in my opinion, is close, but Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin is the best running back, and I have it valued slightly. He's a slight favorite, but I think he could possibly be a top 10 Heisman Trophy candidate if Wisconsin does very well, or does as well as I think they will. I think he could be a top 10 Heisman candidate. Best defense to me is hard. This is the hardest question probably out of everything. But I got to give it to Wisconsin. They returned the most starters, most experience. Got to give it to that. Alright, here's the thing. Experience is a big thing for me. If you've played well and you've had experience and like you're them, to me you're the best. You're the best defense or quarterback in particular. I would say it's hard to give a freshman quarterback, for me, the best quarterback award. It's really hard for me to do that. I'm not saying I won't do it. I'm not saying that it's not impossible, but I have to see more before I can give it to them at the beginning of a season, and that's why I gave the quarterback to Chase McSorley, and that's really why I'm giving Wisconsin the best defense. Michigan has a good defense, great defense. Ohio State will have a good defense. Penn State will have a good defense. Iowa will have a good defense. There's so many good defenses in this conference, but I'm going to give it to Wisconsin for these purposes. Now let's jump into the rankings. We're going to start with the East, Big Ten East. At number 1, well, let's go from number 7 to 1. At 7, I have Rutgers. At 3 and 9, won't be good. There's just nothing to talk about. At 6, I have Maryland. At 6 and 6, may upset one major team, but that's all you can expect. They'll win the games they're supposed to win, but they won't be supposed to win that many games. So that's the way to look at it. At 5, I have Indiana. At 7 and 5, same type of team. Will be a little better. May even go 8 and 4. Surprised me a little bit, but I don't think it'll be any better than 8 and 4. Now to the big 4 teams, the top 4 teams. This gets interesting. It is tight for me. At 4, I have Michigan State at 10 and 2, losing to Arizona State and Penn State. Arizona State's gonna be hard. I know it's hard to see it, but I could see that team upsetting one team like that. I could see it, and we talked about Arizona State the other day, and they won't be a great team, but they're gonna have to upset somebody. At 3, I have Michigan, and actually, I have Michigan State going to 9 and 3. Excuse me, because they will lose to Michigan too. Nonetheless, I have Michigan at 3 at 10 and 2. They'll go 10 and 2. They'll have them losing to Ohio State and Penn State. Like I said earlier, I think their defense will be very good, but offensively, I just don't think it'll be Ohio State or Penn State. Now, Urban Meyer, between these 3 teams, this is where the difference could really play. Is these 3 teams, how they finish. Nonetheless, at 2, I have Penn State. they lose to Ohio State, and at 1 I have Ohio State, and they lose at 11-1. By the way, I have Penn State 11-1 too. Ohio State 11-1 loses to Michigan State. It'll probably be the most stunning game of the season. Nonetheless, they will lose to Michigan State. I think if they don't lose to Michigan State, it'll be Penn State, and Penn State will win the East. That's how I have the East right now. So jam tight right now. Let's go to the West. On the western side, I have Wisconsin at 10-2, losing to Michigan and Penn State. Could go 11-1. I think they could beat Michigan. But nonetheless, I do have Michigan. Them losing to Michigan right now. At the 2, I have Iowa, 9-3, losing to Wisconsin, Penn State, and Northwestern. At 3, which is going to be interesting. I'll talk about it in a minute. I know I'm going 1-7. At 3, I have Northwestern at 8-4. Northwestern's one of those teams they could lose 8. They could lose 6 games. They could lose 7 games, or they could win 8 or 9 games. It's really they're a good enough team to lose that many games, but they could. The teams that they play their schedule is so tough they could lose 6-7 games and even miss a bowl game. But right now, for these purposes, I have them at 8-4. At 4, and 4 and 5 is kind of a tie. Nebraska's at 4 at 7-5. Minnesota's at 7-5 at 5, the 5 spot. Illinois 5-7. Really not that much to talk about with those teams. And 4-8 is Purdue. Although I think they could lose as many as 10 games, and of course they would win 2 games. But for these purposes, I have them 4-8. Which leads to the interesting question of who will be meeting in the conference championship. And for me, the answer is Ohio State. And that's why I talked about earlier of how high I had them ranked. That this Urban Meyer stuff is very important when it comes down to how high I have them ranked. And from the East, of course, or the West is the Wisconsin Badgers. Now, here's really what the question is. Who wins the conference? And this one's hard. This one is hard, very hard. One of the hardest ones, if not the hardest one to predict. I have Wisconsin Badgers winning the conference. But, keep that in mind. But, there's a big exclamation point that needs to be pointed out here. I don't think they'll make it to the top 4. I don't think so. 2 losses is going to get to them. Losing to Michigan is probably going to make them not win the comp or get into the top 4. I have Ohio State getting into the top 4. If any team's going to make it, it would be Ohio State, in my opinion. Just because I think if they make it this far, I think I would have to pull back on one losses and say that they may even go undefeated. But even if they don't, they finish with 2 losses. They lose to a very, very, very good Wisconsin team, and they lose to a very good Michigan State team that would be better than Michigan at that point, and that makes a difference. So I think Ohio State would make it if there was a team that was going to make it out of this Big Ten. I don't think, if Urban Meyer gets fired, I don't think they make it that far. It's just hard to see it. It really is at that point. But that was our Big Ten preview, and probably under 10 minutes, but it's really because I'm doing this a one-person preview. It would probably, typically, the review would last longer, but this one did not. Next topic I want to get into real quick. Let's talk about a little bit of NFL. And I want to talk about the Browns again. This might be the second time I talk about the Browns, or the third time. It doesn't matter. But people, and this is to anybody that really, if you really believe the Browns are gonna go 8-8 or 9-7 or whatever, that's one thing. Only true Browns fans should believe that. I just can't envision. It's like I was saying on Twitter. Let me start from the beginning. So, I see more and more people, and I'm not announcing any names, and it's not just one person. It's been at least 5. It's getting crazy that saying the Browns are going to go 8-8, that we should expect them to go 8-8. Well, I don't, and let me tell you why. This team has been, the last 2 seasons, although they've gotten better, I know that's the biggest thing. They've gotten better, but they've gone 1-31 over the last 2 seasons. I just think a lot of people are buying into a lot of Browns bullshit. I just think that I don't buy into the Browns. I just think all this is a bunch of BS. Talent, they have the talent to go 8-8, but can Hugh Jackson lead them to 8-8? I don't trust him. I do not trust him to lead them to 8-8. I don't. Could he? Yeah, he could. He has offensive mind to do it. We've seen him. He has got a great offensive mind, and he's got a good defense out there right now. But something tells me that I should not trust the Browns again. There's that's the downside of it. But the upside is, now here's the reasons. If you're a true Browns fan, here is why you should believe in the Browns, and the only reasons why you should believe in the Browns. Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor has started. He started last season for the Bills and went to the playoffs. I was about to say went to Super Bowl, but he did not. He got first rounded in the playoffs. But he's proven he can take a team to the playoffs. He is a decent He's a decent quarterback that could lead this team to an 8-8 record. Second, Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry is, in my opinion, a top 10 wide receiver in this league. He is a very, very good wide receiver, and he's proven it in the preseason so far, at least, that he's gonna be pretty good for the Browns too. I think his leadership role has been major for the Browns so far this season so far this season for the Browns. That's something major to keep in mind. But the third reason, if you were going to believe into the Browns, is the defense. The defense has talent to be really good. Has talent to be a top 10 defense. Myles Garrett been impressive so far. But those are the 3 reasons why if you're a Browns fan, you have hope. You really do have hope. There's reason to have hope. Here's 3 more reasons why you should doubt the Browns. If you're anybody that's not a Browns fan or just don't like the Browns or whatever the case may be, I'm neither or. I would probably root for the Browns. I hope they make the playoffs. In a way, I love what I'm saying during this preseason and all regular season. It's gonna bite me, but if they make the playoffs, but nonetheless, for Browns fans and everybody, I think the Browns being decent again would be very good. But nonetheless, let's get back to the reasons why you should doubt the Browns going 8-8. And we're kind of setting 8-8 as that middle stone. It's decent. It's great for the Browns. For Brown standards, that's great, but it's decent for everybody else's standards. Alright, but here's the reason why you should not expect anything from the Browns. Hugh Jackson. Just his record alone, going 1-31 over the last 2 seasons, with a defense that's still been good, defense that's been pretty good. He just chokes games. Any way the Browns can lose a game, they were going to lose a game last season. Anyway, overtime, it didn't matter. They lost anyway, and it's his fault. Some of those games, they probably could have won 6-7 games last season. At least 4. Bare minimum 4. Just based off of 1-possession games. And they lost them. That's on your coach. That is on your coach, and no doubt in my mind. And actually, let me pull up. Let's see how many 1-possession games they had. I really want to see it. So here it is. 5 games. 5 games that were within 1 possession. And that's within 7 points. Not even 8. 7 points. 5 games. The game against Pittsburgh, Game 1, Game 3, Game 5, Game 7, Game 14, and the last game of the season against Pittsburgh again. Those were just games that were within 1 possession alone. Now let's get into the games that were not within that were within 2 possessions that were reasonable, not too hard to expect. Jacksonville, Game 11. Cincinnati, within 14 points. That's a little far-fetched. The Chargers, they lost by 9. That's reasonable to win. It's just all these games are so close. They did not lose a game within more than, let's see, their worst loss was by 24 to Cincinnati in Week 4. But every other game was within 14, 15 points. So why should I trust Hugh Jackson to win a game? Now look, I know he's gonna win a game. He's gonna win a game, but this is reasons why I'm saying why I have doubt. I have real doubt. Now here's the second reason. Baker Mayfield. I know some people will not be able to believe it, but that is a reason why I think there's reason to doubt that they could even go 8-8. And he's maybe a reason why to doubt they could win 6 games. Look, he's a rookie. He's a rookie. He's not a... I just don't think he's not going to consistently... I don't think he's going to consistently play 16 games. Or 8 games, assuming he were to start. If he were to start, the Browns win no more than 6 games. And that's at most. I could see them winning 3 or 4 games. I really believe that. I just think it's the first season. Just to me, you have the outliers like Dak Prescott and even a long time ago, Big Roethlisberger. You have a few others, but not that many. It's just 3 or 4. It's like a small class of quarterbacks that actually had a very good regular season starting of the whole season. Now that's why I said Tyrod Taylor is to start. He needs to start at least this one season, just because I just think it would do Baker Mayfield good. I'm not saying now there's been too many mistakes saying that I think Baker Mayfield's played bad or Baker Mayfield's not ready or whatever the case may be. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not saying he played bad during those first 2 preseason games. He played very good. He did. I don't say great that often. So that's why I'm not saying great. But he played very good. I just think it would do him good to sit behind Tyrod Taylor for a season, see a veteran quarterback, hopefully lead the team to the playoffs, which is possible with the weapons they have. There's no excuse not to. But with that, like I said, with that being said, I just think too much hype for the Browns, and those are really the 2 reasons. I said the 3, but I think I'm gonna leave the third one off just because I'm not I just don't think it really qualifies quite as a reason. It's more of a reason to me, but I'm not going to really talk about it here. But there's 3 reasons you should trust the Browns to have a chance. There's 2 reasons you shouldn't. I don't trust Hugh Jackson. That's my top reason. And yeah, I mean, that's it. That's my take on the Browns. And yeah, I wasn't gonna get into the Browns that much, but I decided I just had to. I just see too much discussion about the Browns being so good, and I'm like, whoa, hold on a minute. The same team that's a better version of the team that went 1-31 in the past 2 seasons is gonna win 8 games. Stop it. That's 8 times what they've won in 2 years. I mean, and it is sad, but that's the truth. That is the truth of it. Just slow down. We hyped them up last season, and they failed expectations miserably. And yeah, I mean, that's that. That's all I've got for today's podcast. Thanks to everybody for joining me today. We'll be back again soon, very soon, with the SEC and ACC previews. I'll put out a poll again. Big Ten won unanimously, pretty much. 2 votes went to the ACC and SEC. That's why we did Big Ten today. And I have a feeling, I know why. I have a feeling it was either because of Urban Meyer or the Big Ten East. One of the 2. But nonetheless, things to come up. We did not go live stream this podcast just because I recorded it so late. But I think our guest that came on at the beginning, like episode 2 or 3, I can't remember which one it was, but he'll be returning for another episode. Probably sometime next week. I'm not sure. We kind of started talking again today. Or kind of started talking about the podcast today. And yeah, I expect him to be on fairly soon, I would expect. He may be on regularly, I don't know yet. Nonetheless, weekly podcast. I expect to have the SEC or ACC out this weekend, whichever one we do, and then the final one next week, and it'll be all out before Wednesday, so we'll probably have it out Tuesday. I will right now I'll say one on Saturday or Sunday, one on Tuesday. That's where I stand with that. Maybe a little sooner, maybe not. And then I'm gonna take pretty much from, let's see, basically that whole next week. We won't have a podcast until the day before the NFL regular season starts with the Falcons and Eagles. We'll talk about that game. We'll talk predictions. Lots of fun coming up. Yeah, so that's all I've got for you. Thank you for joining me. Peace out, and I'll talk to you guys later this weekend, or later on in the week, or next week. Peace out. Thanks.